And this hangout is live. Konnichiwa, bitches. After a short 2-week hiatus, the Ultimate Man's League podcast is back. You got the commission, Doug Gardner, and the owner and current UML champion, Connor Hemian. Connor, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
All righty. Got a big show for you today. We're going to talk about some Week 9. We're going to do a little playoff prediction thing here, so that should be a lot of fun. Obviously, we're going to do our power ranking tiers that we do every single episode of the UML podcast. And then we're going to talk about the weeks ahead, and then maybe we'll have some time for some fun at the end. But honestly, I think the most important thing to talk about is the fact that Kevin's reign of terror was ended in Week 8 by AJ.
Oh, yes, it was.
Connor, you want to
go ahead and talk about it, but
can you just talk about a little bit of how Kevin's emotions were affected by that ass whooping? Frankly, he got killed in Week 8. How did he deal with it?
Imagine an adult baby in a diaper, and he just pooped his pants, and he's really salty about it.
I suspected it was like that baby in a diaper. Yeah, I suspected that.
Mm-hmm.
Was he questioning his status in the world, as a man, frankly, after losing his undefeated season to the toilet seat? Frankly, I mean, he lost to the toilet seat.
Yeah, I think he's definitely. I just remember just seeing him staring at a wall, just kind of not saying anything. I kind of thought I lost him for a minute. I think it might be the dementia though, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the dementia. It's a really horrible disease. It helps you, it has your brain just do weird things it wouldn't otherwise do, like set a lineup that could lose an undefeated season to AJ in Week 8. I don't know if we mentioned this before, but Kevin actually lost his undefeated season in Week 8 to AJ.
Was it? It was
to
AJ.
AJ. And if you don't know who AJ is, he is actually the last place owner last year, having a decent season this year, but he's still the owner of the toilet seat. It is displayed prominently in his home, and basically he beat Kevin to death with it. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it was horrible. So without getting Kevin too upset here, because we know he's going to be really salty and be like, "Who did you draft? Who did you draft?"
He's stomping around the house.
So we'll go ahead and move on. Talk about some of these Week 9 games. I'll put on my screen share so that everyone can see some of the scores that we're talking about and whatnot. If I knew how to use the internet, that'd be super. You good, Connor? Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and start off talking about the Rabbit College Rampage just absolutely destroying D's Nates. Now we know everyone saw today that Nate is mathematically eliminated. Is the Rampage back?
I definitely think so. I think, he's starting to he's still, Hopkins was a question mark, but he was able to still get a touchdown on this one. So maybe there's a little bit of hope for him there. But Jeffrey's coming along now. Mixon's finally the lead back. Cam Newton's Cam Newton. I think he's definitely got his pieces. They're kind of starting to grind the gears and get it going. Ajayi on the bench. I mean, I would have benched him too, but he's, 3 or 4 practices. He's already going to be a great starter from the looks of it.
Yeah, he'll start from now on, I'm sure.
Yep, I think he's definitely I think that was one of the missing pieces with Murray, kind of questionable all the time. I think that's something he can plug in now and feel good about. I think it's definitely coming along for his team.
Is there any reason to be optimistic about Nate for next season? I mean, he did make that really great trade for Gronk, and he does have Austin Sferrin-Jenkins. He's got Cooper Kupp, Kelvin Benjamin. He's got a few good players. Would one good draft put this team right in contention for a playoff spot next year?
I don't think so, but I think it could be. I think what could happen is this year I don't think he has any shot at winning the first pick. But I think what he could do is get some of those late round pieces in this upcoming draft and then use that to maybe get the first pick the following year. And then I think he could definitely compete.
Yeah. So,
but I think it'll probably take 2 drafts.
Great thing about Nate, though, is that Nate, he's diligent, sets his lineup, works the waiver wire.
New to get Chris Ivory.
Yeah, we're not gonna see it a season like this again from me. I think for at least a long time. So
unless he gets trashed at the draft, which
which apparently is going to happen. Alex and him are already talking about doing shots of Hennessy, so we'll see. Petersburg Penguins, dad punchers, yuck. 103-86. Penguins get the win. Tim, if the season ended today, would be a playoff team. Is there any reason to think that if he makes it, he'll do anything when he gets there?
Well, the good news is he won without Fournette, but I just don't see Fournette in the lineup, solving his problems. I mean, his tight ends are struggling. Fitzgerald's going to be in trouble now with no quarterback. I mean, he still put up 12. I mean, he's Fitzgerald. He's still going to get what he can get. But Jackson's streaky. Des Bryant looks banged up. Montgomery isn't the starter anymore. Charles is a backup as well. He's had maybe one or two good games this year, but he's just really struggling. I feel like could he surprise someone with a high output from Fournette and Matt Stafford together? Maybe. Get far in the playoffs if he does.
Yeah, and Joe's team, Joe kind of packed it in with that Todd Gurley trade he did early last week, and
the devastating loss of not
Deshaun
only
Watson.
losing Watson, but then having Fuller, kind of.
Yeah, I mean he didn't catch 4 touchdowns
anymore.
So it's crazy. But yeah, I think unfortunately for Joe, by trading away Gurley, losing Watson, losing a lot of Fuller's value, the whole Martavis Bryant is really kind of a lost season for Joe. Unfortunately, I think we're looking at a first or maybe second round exit in the first choice tournament, and a mid first round pick. Maybe he'll be picking like 5th or 6th. And if he picks well again, I mean, he'd either keep Gurley there, obviously, or he could throw him back and try to get something better. But unfortunately, I don't think I don't think there's a whole lot to be grateful for this year for Joe.
But he does have a lot of promise in coming years. I think Watson is going to be a force for him in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And he's I think like a 6th, 7th round draft pick too. AJ versus Pat, Man Bear Pig versus Bushes. Pat stomped him in this one, 172, 119. And that was with Mike Evans getting ejected and only putting up 2 points. Pat's won 6 in a row. Is this a team, despite the LeGarrette Blount thing, is this a team you got to watch out for to win his second UML title?
I definitely think so. I feel like he's kind of getting this effect that you were getting at the beginning of the season, but there's less emphasis on the run game now because, they're not winning as many games, so now they have to throw more. And I feel like Smith and Kelsey have almost become the equivalent of your Hill and Hunt to start the season. They're putting up tons of points for him every week. Every time that they're on point with each other and they're working together, I think that he's going to win games. So I think he's very dangerous. It's disappointing for Miller. I think he was really starting to get it going, and now without Watson there, he's going to be, kind of focused more by the defense, which is unfortunate because he was really starting to turn his season around. But, I mean, then you've got Landry and Evans. Robbie Anderson was a sneaky pickup, but he's got 14. I think Pat always has a knack for finding wide receivers. Jared Cook apparently wants to play this season. I've never seen that before. And even Lynch is showing some life. I mean, this team's just firing on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, it's definitely, for me, a surefire playoff spot there. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. AJ's putting together a nice season, but it's doomed, right? He's not going to win the UML Bowl, is he?
He's definitely gotten lucky with scheduling. If you look at his total points for the year, he's much lower than everyone else with the records around his. But that being said, I think he's definitely improved substantially. I think Jared Goff is turning out to be a fantastic pick after, not being that great for the past year or two.
And we
Christian McCaffrey's been solid. What's that?
We actually questioned the choice to keep Jared Goff. Yeah. And then he turned out to be a really good player. So that was the guy that you were talking about, Christian McCaffrey?
Christian McCaffrey was that running back he's not had the past few seasons. I think he needs to free up Eddie Lacy next year, get that second-round pick back. Mm-hmm. That's something he should have done this year. But, I think he's got a knack for picking things up on the waiver wire. Jack Doyle's worked out for him. So he's got a tight end. He's got a running back. He's got a quarterback. He just needs to find some more consistency at wide receiver and get a few more running backs. I think.
And another quarterback would really help too. Joe Flacco is some ass.
Yep.
Cleve Wellington, which is disgusting, and the White Sharks. Carlo lost this game. We'll talk about Adam real quick. Carson Wentz is the real deal. He can absolutely trade Andrew Luck now, or maybe even just flat out throw him back in the draft next year. He's got a couple of young studs at quarterback. He's looking good there. His running back position, I mean, the guys are putting up some points, I guess, but nothing really too inspired there. Same thing with the wide receiver. Adam's kind of putting together this by hook or by crook season here. He's 4-5, almost certainly not going to get the toilet seat this year, and made some really good picks over the last couple of years that are going to serve him well going into the coming seasons. But I don't think this is a playoff team. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think he's got some kind of block on draft day in his head for him to actually find something at running back. That's his consistent issue. I think he was able to get a good pick out of Baldwin. He's gotten good pickups throughout the year. His quarterbacks, I guess he can draft every quarterback for you. I'd like his advice on quarterbacks from the sounds of it. He's got some really great guys. He's able to get Melvin Gordon, and he won without him on bye, so that's a good start. As you said, he's got guys that put up points here and there, but he's just too streaky to be consistent enough to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Is Carlo in trouble?
I think so. I think he should be very worried. His team is not performing well. C.J. Anderson's kind of fallen off the map. LaShawn McCoy had a fluke game. I don't think that'll happen again, but it definitely didn't do him any favors this week. Jones has been odd this year. I think he's not doing badly, but
that drop was brutal in the first.
He's just not doing. He's just not himself. Carlo's used to him giving him 30 points or more some weeks to really save some of his games, and he's just not getting that from him. And I really think it comes down to that Crowell trade has not worked out for him at all, and I think it was something he really needed right now.
Yeah, I concur. Still a decent team, but definitely it's got its problems. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and talk about Pain Train fullbacks. This is your game from last week. 152-109. Alex had you sweating here early during the 1 o'clock games, but even with a 0 from Ryan Griffin and a lousy performance from Winston, you were able to pull this off. We'll spare you from talking about your team for you. And then is Alex's team not nearly as toilet seedy as we thought?
Well, I think he's falling back towards that toilet seediness lately. I feel like he's had such a great advantage, as I talked about in my post a few weeks ago about the remaining schedule. He was set to really make a run, and he's 0-2 at it. And I think he's starting to really fall too far. I really thought he was going to be one of those teams that starts to climb the ladder, and his team hasn't produced enough to do that. I think Peterson's been a great pickup. Forte had but now you got trouble with Doug Martin. Blake Bortles isn't really going to win you any games. AJ Green decided to be stupid this week. Cooper has underperformed in every game but one when he put up 44. Ginn was a good pickup. His tight ends have been iffy. There's just too many question marks. I feel like he's going for him. I mean, he did have Tom Brady and McKinnon on bye, so maybe that'll add some juice for his next week matchup. But I just think his pieces aren't really coming together the way that everybody thought it was going to. And he's starting 0-2 on this run that he was supposed to have is not a good sign.
Cool. And the fullbacks are starting to round into health, maybe round into form, maybe look into pulling some stuff together down the stretch here as well. But everyone knows the names. They know the game. Cookie Snatchers and Trippers. Ray has just kind of continued his bad luck this season.
He's following the same as Alex. He's following the same way.
Yeah, just some unforgivable holes. Like Ed Dixon can't be starting. The Bills' defense has been good, and starting against the Jets was a good move. But a couple bagels against Kevin, you got no chance. He had a ton of bye weeks. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Williams, Tariq Cohen, and even Deion Sims are all like potentially starting players. But it was just he was a severely bye weakened team going against a severely bye weakened team and got killed. If you're worried about Kevin winning the title, you should be, because he put up 180 points without Le'Veon Bell, without James White, and without Antonio Brown. That is not good for the rest of us, okay? Kevin's team is absolutely clicking right now, despite the fact that he had an absolutely embarrassing loss to lose his perfect season against AJ in Week 8. AJ, the toilet seat owner, we all know that. And that'll be like this but on this team that could potentially win the title at the end of the year. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Connor?
Yeah, I felt like this was supposed to be that one that was supposed to be what AJ did last week. This was supposed to be his loss for the season. You said it. He has no Le'Veon Bell, no Antonio Brown. This was the time to beat him. And I mean, Ray didn't perform enough to do it anyway, but even still, it didn't matter. He still put up 180. T.Y. Hilton shows up with 35 points out of nowhere finally, playing Sims and Thompson and Gore at running back, and it doesn't matter because he's got Drew Brees and Dak Prescott and Marvin Jones and Hilton just running the show, and his tight ends putting up to each other. I mean, this team has no holes even when there's holes.
Yeah, it's definitely a daunting task. It'll take a contender making a really big move at the trade deadline, I think, here for anyone to unseat Kevin. And if Kevin is the one who wants to make a move at the trade deadline, he can pretty much guarantee himself a championship. One more stud running back or stud wide receiver on this team pretty much ends the conversation. You could use a tight end maybe too. But yeah, this team is absolutely
just
scary.
To go to Ray real quick. If I was Ray, I'd be worried about my running back play. I feel like Javorius Allen isn't going to be doing what he did this week with Woodhead coming back, and Cohen's fallen off the face of the map. That was a great pickup at the start of the year that hasn't worked out now. Coleman should have been getting more points with Freeman banged up. That didn't happen. And Mark Ingram is getting outclassed by now. And I just wonder if some of these running back tandems that worked out so well for him last year, if they're kind of falling apart for him now. And I'd be very worried about it.
Yeah, for sure. Ray is one of those teams on the cusp of the playoffs that really needs to string together some wins. We'll finish up with Murder Muppets at Suck My Ditka. 165, 130. Muppets take care of business here. Yes. Steve kind of packed it in with that Carlos Hyde trade. You and I talked about that off the air. And he's putting together an okay lineup. I mean, that would have beaten a few teams this week. But he didn't really. I mean, he had a ton of buys this week too, like 5 starters all on bye this week against a team that that he just traded one of his best players to. Thoughts on Steve's prospects going in, because Steve will probably be eliminated from playoff contention this week. What are Steve's prospects going into next year?
Well, I mean, he was able to get the rights to Trubisky for Chicago love. I mean, maybe that could be something that could work out. He's still got Jordan Howard to build with after the trade this year that wiped out most of his team. He's got Evan Ingram, who I think is going to be a top 5 tight end for a while, which is always great. Devontae Parker looks like a freak athlete. If Miami could ever kind of work out their offensive woes and find the right quarterback to put him with, I think he could be an elite player. Matt Ryan's always going to be – I mean, he's having a bad year this year, but I think Ryan's going to be a great pick for a long time. So he's no worries about his quarterbacks. But I think he's still got a lot of work to do, but I think he's got some great pieces. I think even though Corey Davis could be a really good player, I think he should definitely throw him back. I think he took him too high. But he's definitely got pieces here and there to play with at all the positions.
For sure. And we'll talk about my team a little bit more later on. No one wants to sit here and listen to me talk about my own team.
I don't want that. Thank you.
So why don't we go ahead and change gears, Connor? I actually came up with this idea for this next segment to talk about the teams that we think are going to make the playoffs, and then you actually telepathically stole the idea from me and then presented it to me as if it were your own. So we'll go ahead and we're just going to reveal our top 6 teams going into the playoffs. Why don't we go ahead and start with the team we think is going to be the number 1 seed?
I have Kevin coming in the 1 seed with a 12-1 record.
12-1 record. Okay. Well, I actually also had Kevin as the 1 seed. I didn't put a record down for him. What's the rest of his schedule look like, Connor?
He's got. Let me just see here. He's got Steve next, which Steve's packed it in, so I think that's going to be an easy win. Then he's got Carlo coming up, who's really struggling right now. I just don't see him having enough of an oomph to get at Kevin's ridiculously stacked team. He closes the year out with Pat, which could be a really interesting game, though. I think that maybe he could be 11-2 by the end of it, but I think he'll still get the win. But I think that's going to maybe be the game to watch of the year.
Alrighty. So I had Kevin as my number 1 seed. I actually gave the other bye to you, Connor. I think your team's starting to round into some health, and the fact that your remaining schedule isn't super crazy. They're all winnable games for you. You've got like you said, Carlo kind of tripping over stuff. You got my team, who, despite the fact that we've been a little bit of a surprise this year, your team should still be able to take care of business against a rebuilding Muppets team. You got Steve and Adam, so I think you could win all 4 of those games and end the season on a 7-game winning streak in 9 out of 10 games after a 1-2 start. So a 10-3 season is completely within your grasp, and I think 10-3 gets you that second bye. Your thoughts?
I have myself here as well. I have myself at 9-4. I do have myself losing to you, especially if Elliott doesn't play.
Are there like a bunch of bye weeks? I mean, I'm trying to sell off all my good players.
By the end of the trade deadline, maybe none of this will matter. But I do have myself here, and I have myself at the 2 by a tiebreaker, leading into my 3rd, which is Pat. I think Pat is also going to be 9-4, but because I beat him week 1, it'll decide that I get the bye over him.
That it would. Moving into the rest of these playoff teams, who's your 3 seed?
It's going to be Pat at 9-4. For his schedule, I think Alex is really going to give him trouble. I think that because he's got Kansas City on bye, so I think this is the one chance for Pat to really have a loss. And I think Alex's team, although it's been struggling, has the capability of putting up points. So I think this is 1 week to watch. If he doesn't lose that game, I think Pat may be competing with my dad for the end of the season. And then I think he's got Steve next, and then you. And I think he's capable of beating those 2 teams. And like I said, he's going to close it out with my dad. I think that's another. He could potentially win all these games, but I just think he's going to lose 1 or 2 here or there, and it's going to set him back a little bit.
Great. I actually had Pat as my 3 seed as well. So we're kind of in lockstep. And if you're wondering, guys watching the show, Connor and I deliberately didn't share these with each other before the show, so this is all completely just a coincidence. My number 4 seed is Queef Wellington. I think Carlo's already socked away enough wins to get into the playoffs, and he's ahead of some of these other teams with some tiebreakers that have similar records. But he does have a pretty rough schedule down the stretch. He's got losable games in 3 of 4. I think he probably beats Tim, probably beats Joe, but probably loses the other 2 and gets into the playoffs at 8-5. And I think that'll be good enough for a 4 seed. Your thoughts, Connor?
I have Queef Wellington at 8-5, those same exact win and losses. So we're on the money right now.
Is he your 4 seed?
I think his team. He's my 4 seed. Yes.
Oh wow, that's funny.
So I think he's really struggling, and I think he's going to drop. But he's already won enough that he's definitely a lock. I think. I don't think he has to worry about missing the playoffs, but he's definitely going to fall down the rank.
And who is your 5 seed?
5. I have, with a 4-win streak on top of his already. I don't know what he's at now. I think he's at. It would make it 6 wins in a row. I think. I have Doug Sr. making the playoffs with an 8-5 record.
Yeah, his team has really kind of turned a corner. He was doing that whole self-deprecating thing after he lost to Steve a couple weeks ago, but $180 and $160 over the last 2 weeks. just absolutely stomping teams, and he's got a relatively favorable schedule. He can win all the games left on his schedule, like you said. I actually had Doug Senior as my 6th seed at 8-5, but he's definitely, I thought, a surprise team. And not me, he's 4-5. He was 2-5 a couple weeks ago, and everyone was just saying, he's cooked, he's done. But never count the old man out. There's a reason he's made every single playoffs in UML history, and is one of only 2 teams with 2 titles. So I think the old man's got a huge chance here. My 5 seed was Team Man Bear Pig. AJ seems to be doing just enough to get by. I think he can win 3 of his last 4 games, maybe even 4. Maybe he beats my dad. And I think if he wins 3 of those, he'll be 8-5, and he'll be right there as well. I mean, I guess maybe if he loses to my dad, he'll be the 6 seed, not the 5 seed. But AJ was my other playoff team that made it down here. Who was your last seed there, Connor?
I had a bit of a decision making. I had to go back and look at who beat who where and who would beat who in my simulation. I have AJ at 7-6, Doug at 7-6, and Ray at 7-6. But I gave it to Ray because he has the tie over you and AJ.
In your scenario,
in my scenario, he beats AJ. He already beat you earlier in the season. So I think there's going to be a few 7-6, but Ray makes it. I think he can still turn it around.
He's got a chance there. I had Ray, myself, Tim, and Adam all as the next 4 teams to miss, and then Alex, Joe, Nate, and Steve got no fucking chance. But yeah, surprising that we had the same kind of like we both put my dad in, and the top 4 seeds were all the same. So definitely an interesting exercise. Maybe we can revisit this a little bit later on in the season. But Connor, you also put together some power rankings.
I did.
And we know Kevin's at the top like he is every week, despite the fact that 2 weeks ago he lost to AJ. He lost his undefeated season to AJ. You see him the 8-1. That one is a loss to AJ, who is the toilet seat holder, which I'm sure made you very happy. But we'll move on from Kevin losing his perfect season to AJ, who is the toilet seat owner, on to tier 2, which you have Pat, yourself, and Carlo. Now, I know you were talking earlier about Carlo being kind of a team on the downswing of things. What makes you put him in your second tier?
Because he's still proven it for the majority of the year. I think by the next week I'll be swapping Doug Sr. with Carlo, or at least maybe 2 weeks from now. But for right now, I think, we could chalk this up as he's just not getting it done this week, and, there's a chance that he's going to pick it back up. He could beat me this week and really change things. But I think he still deserves to be at tier 2 for what he's done for the season, but I think he's definitely on his way down. Not too far more down, but he'll be a tier lower in a week or 2.
We'll check into tier 3 here. We talked a decent amount about my dad's team and about AJ's team. You have Ray and me in here, and we'll skip over me because there's a good chance I'm going to do something at the trade deadline, and it'll just make everything irrelevant. You said you think Ray's going to make the playoffs. Ray's sitting here at 4-5 he has some bad losses. What makes you think that Ray pulls it off and gets into that last playoff spot?
Because he's been a great drafter these past few years, and he has pieces that... He
was a great drafter before. It's just like he'd make great picks, and then they wouldn't work out. and so like it's definitely a strong suit of Ray's, but go on.
I think it's because we've seen him put up 180, and I know his team can do that. I just think he's had some really bad luck, and it can't last that long. I think, do I think he's going to be 7-6? Maybe he loses 1 or 2 more games and he puts himself out of the playoffs. But he's going to be winning big games. He's going to have a comeback. I don't see him having a season where he's going to be having a losing record. I think he's going to put it together in some capacity. This team's just too good for that.
Yeah,
I think it's going to improve.
You don't look at Ray on your schedule like, oh, that's a win. You definitely, and it doesn't matter, if you're Kevin or whoever. So you definitely don't look at it that way. Tier 4 is Tim, Alex, and Adam. Connor, are there any teams in this tier you think have a shot at making the playoffs?
I think they're all here because I just look at their teams and I just don't see it. I really don't. I think Tim's really fallen apart. Alex has kind of choked on his moment. He basically was supposed to be what Doug Sr. is doing now, and he's not Doug Sr. And then Adam, he surprises me. I guess I honestly think I would give it to Adam out of all of them, just because he seems to have that kind of luck going for him this year, where he kind of gets the right way, where he doesn't put up 160 or 70 or 80 like some of the best teams do, but he puts up 130 or 140 quite often, and I think that kind of works for him because you just get the right kind of matchup, and he slides in there and gets that win. I think he could definitely go 7-6, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, and even if he does, that might not be enough. So, you got Joe and Steve, two teams that have kind of both packed it in here in Tier 5. Why are they not down in Tier 6 with Nate?
Because Nate is a whole different kind of bad. I think Steve really tried hard this year. I think it definitely showed. He's able to put up 130 this week. He could have beaten quite a few teams this week.
Yeah.
And that's after throwing in the towel. He's still got talent on his team. So he's not, quite at Nate's level where he's putting up 70 points in a week. And Joe's here because his team was good. Kind of injuries, and then obviously wanted to trade for the future. But he's still, he was 3 or 4 weeks ago, you could have said he could be one of the playoff spots with what he had going on. Watson and Fuller were exciting. He had the running backs. His team was not bad.
Yeah, no, he definitely had some Joe luck, if you want to say it. So we'll go ahead and look ahead to Week 10 now. Some really important matchups with a lot of playoff implications on the line. Why don't we go ahead and lead off with this week's game of the week? Fozzie fullbacks, Queef Wellington, potentially a bye on the line, and a lot of injuries on your side still. A couple bye weeks. You gonna beat him?
I think I need some luck in the waiver wire. I'm happy my trade included Joe's waiver claim, so hopefully I get some of the pieces I want.
Oh, that's right. I got to change that.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad I brought it up. But, I feel like Eli Manning does have a nice matchup against San Francisco, so maybe you get a bit more than what he's been getting on Eli Manning, which is concerning to me. But, C.J. Anderson, I think Denver's going to be down real fast, and he's going to be completely unused. Theo Riddick, this is the one game against Cleveland where he's not going to be necessary either. I think it's going to be a juicy matchup for McCoy, so I'm worried about McCoy putting up some serious points. Knowing Dallas, I'm sure Julio Jones will have a field day with that secondary. He's got some guys that could really light it up.
You lose this game,
if I can manage, it would definitely not help me. But I think I've got the right kind of pieces that could give me, 15 to 20 points 3 or 4 different times, whereas his team is going to be reliant on, 2 guys putting up 35. And I feel like I'm going to take my odds over that.
For sure. Another game with very little to do with the playoffs. Trippers versus Ditka. Kevin wins. Move on.
I think so.
All right, Kevin wins.
I think it's settled.
Muppets versus Snatchers. This is a really important game with a lot of playoff implications, and with my whole wanting to move some players off before the trade deadline, it could end up being a blowout win for Ray, and a really important one. It'll get him back to 500 if he can pull this off. And since I am intent on making some trades, I'm actually going to pick Ray. So I picked against myself all season. I'm actually going to go ahead and, once I pull these trades off, I think it's going to be pretty obvious that I lose this game. I lose it anyway, but I think it's
because KC is on bye, so I looked at that and I said, Ray, if Ray doesn't win this game, he should pack it up. I think he needs to win this game.
Yeah, I think
if he can't manage to beat you, it's going to be bad for him.
Yeah, he lost to Kevin last week without his guys, and if he loses to me without mine, not only going to have good players backing him up. So I think Ray is in a decent spot here to get back to 500. Man Bear Pig versus Sharks, another game with reasonable amounts of playoff implications. If Adam wants to make the playoffs, he's got to go beat AJ in the Man Bear Pig Dome. AJ's got some buys, got some injuries. Adam going to get him?
Well, the problem is Wentz is also on bye. So there goes his MVP of the season. I think this is going to be a really, really tight one. Really low scoring, too, but it's going to be very tight.
The 120.
I think it's all going to depend on if Damian Williams keeps being, used in the offense in Miami. He got 18 out of them last week, you know. So I think if he can get – because other than that, his running backs aren't going to be putting up points for him. Kelly is going to struggle against that Viking defense. And Tolbert's, you know, just kind of a wild card. If he can run in a touchdown, that's good, but he doesn't do it too often. I think it's really going to be dependent on Williams really showing up, because on the other side, you have Lacey and Alfred Blue starting right now. I think that's something you got to kind of have the win on. You can't let AJ get more points than you just on McCaffrey alone. If he can win that running back race, I think he's got it.
Yeah, this is a big game for Adam. He loses, his season's over. So, Pain Train Long Bushes, is this a pretty much cut and dry win for Pat, or are those bye weeks and those injuries and the Mike Evans suspension going to give Alex a shot here?
This might be a shot for Alex to show us he's not done. I think it's too late, but I think he could definitely surprise, because right now, like you with KC having the buys, he's got Kelsey on bye. He's got Jared Cook on bye. He's got Lynch on bye. You know, there's a lot of bye week players that he's not in. Alex Smith, you know, arguably the best quarterback this year. He's got a lot of holes to fill.
For sure.
I think Alex is going to really enjoy that, and I think he's going to get the win.
Yeah, good, bold prediction there from O'Connor. Nate versus Tim. Nate's projection's pretty close here. Tim's got some injuries. Can Nate try to climb away from that toilet seat, or is he boned?
Oh, the toilet seat is his.
If he wins this game and finishes with the same record as Steve, then Steve gets the toilet seat because Nate beat Steve. This is a really important game for Nate.
Could be. I think this is even more important for Tim, because if Tim loses this game, it's just proof that his hot start was a mirage. He needs to beat a team like Nate, you know, and it doesn't look like he's going to do it handsomely, but at least to get that win and, you know, get him back on track to, you know, a 6-4 record looks really nice for the playoff run. Yeah, but if he were to lose to Nate right now, that'd be devastating. Yeah,
that's if like you want to go in the playoffs, these are the games you got to go win. You got to beat Nate. Beyond that, you got Rampage versus Punchers. Is this going to be another statement win for the old man? Is he just going to go and just stomp Joe and prove I'm back, I'm making the playoffs, I've got some good players, and an inferior team like Joe is just going to get crushed? What do you think?
I think so. You know, when you have to start Tom Savage as your quarterback, you know, that's just it's the Joe Nuska luck, you know.
Yeah, it was not as bad as that one year we had 6 quarterbacks all get season-ending injuries, but it's still pretty bad. Joe's working for the future, and the Rampage is on the up and up. I'd watch out for this Rampage team in the playoffs. I think they're.
Oh yeah.
I think they're like this is the team, like, you know, like we both talked about you getting a bye. You're hoping that like the other team wins, so you don't have to play them. You know, it's like
definitely.
And that'll wrap up the Week 10 preview. Connor, we got a couple of minutes here. Thanksgiving's coming up. What's the best Thanksgiving food?
As in like a singular item?
Yeah.
Or like a combo. I'm a big fan of mashed potatoes myself.
Mashed potatoes over stuffing. Defend yourself, sir.
Well, that's why I said it's limited to one, because when I have Thanksgiving dinner, I'm very strange. I don't like things mixed on my plate any other time of the year, but on Thanksgiving, I take my turkey, I take my mashed potatoes, I take my stuffing, I take my corn, and I just mash it all together on my plate and eat it like that.
Interesting.
So I get the best of it all.
Also disgusting. You are an animal. Well, I think stuffing is. I mean, I think stuffing is almost gets too much credit. You know, stuffing is stuffing's great and all, but I think people really sleep on, you know, yams and
that cranberry sauce.
Cranberry sauce is an essential part of every Thanksgiving meal. Rolls, you know, I don't really crave rolls except for during Thanksgiving. It's like, how can I possibly work 8 rolls into this one meal? And you can't, because you have to eat like 9,000 other things. You know, there's corn on the cob, and there's carrots, and there's everything. But I think
I try to eat it all, but then I just end up falling into a slumber as I watch football and wake up 3 hours later.
When you watch the Cowboys stomp the Los Angeles Chargers, I should know that living in Southern California, but the Los Angeles Chargers are going down to the Dallas Cowboys, with or without Ezekiel Elliott. Well, Connor, thanks for coming by and doing the show today. We'll try to get these out to you guys a little bit more consistently. I'm sure you guys all saw my post. I apologize for not doing these over the last couple of weeks.
Maybe if we had some more guests step up, it'd be a lot easier too.
Yeah, people ask me, hey, can I do the podcast? I'd be like, all right, maybe I can find an hour here or there. But without further ado, this will be the end of the 8th edition of the Ultimate Man's League podcast. We'll be back with you next week to talk about how I vanquished Ray and how Kevin lost his undefeated season to AJ, who is.
Wait, what did you just say there? Did you say something about him losing to AJ and not having an undefeated season?
No, actually, what I said was 2 weeks ago. Week 8, the week we didn't do a podcast. Kevin actually lost an undefeated season to the toilet seat holder, which is just, frankly, it's just embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. It really is.
It's like, before I thought, when I had my undefeated season broken up by a ragtag Pat team, who went on to win the title, that was one thing. But that was just a victim of a Cinderella story. This is embarrassing. This is sad. This is, he'll be like, I won the title. I was 12-1. Oh, 12-1. Really?
Yeah.
Really,
who was that
Kevin?
Lost to?
Yeah, it was to the toilet.
Who's that?
Kevin.
Okay.
So if anyone sees Kevin, make sure to mention that to him. But until next time, guys, konnichiwa, bitches.